Ian Anderson talks about getting old, that voice, and Lou Gramm. I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Music. It's not easy for a rocker to get a little older. Everyone talks about the vocalist because that's usually the first guy who starts losing his chops. But let's remember, guitarists sometimes can't play the way they could in the past. The timing goes with the older drummers sometimes. And in this clip, also, we talk about the great Lou Gramm. I was surprised that Ian Anderson was such a fan. Take a listen. You said in the book that you used brute force on your voice back in the old days, and which is hard on a voice. But you're probably like the 20th person that I've talked to that basically said the same thing, because no one was teaching this stuff back then.
Well, it's not just that. It's, inevitably a product of age. As his health deteriorated and his age increased, Pavarotti was frequently having to cancel concerts because he knew he couldn't make that high B at the end of Nessun Dorma anymore. And on the nights when your voice isn't just going to do it, you're terrified because people are going to criticize you and hiss and boo as audiences can do, even at stars of opera. So it gets pretty difficult as you get older. Some people are lucky to keep their voices. Friend of mine, Jack Bruce from Cream, he was lucky that he kept his voice in pretty good shape without trying right through to the months before his death. There are other people who really, really struggle. And I think perhaps one of the saddest casualties of overdoing it early on was Lou Gramm, a foreigner who, sang. For me, he is the all-time best ever rock tenor vocalist. He really has all the things that you would want to have in a voice: diction, clarity, tonality, pitch. Everything was great about it. And unfortunately, he drove himself too hard in the studio, and it was very difficult to replicate that on stage in a 2-hour show. So, he told me himself. He said that the guitar player, wrote the tunes in that key, and I had to struggle to get my voice up there to sing the melodies that fitted. And he blamed, quote, the guitarist, but whatever the reason was, it was very difficult for him to replicate that even when he was still in his 30s. These days, of course, Lou, having suffered very serious and almost terminal ill health, is for other reasons not able to sing that way anymore. But everybody has their little periods where they see how far they can push themselves, and for me it was probably 1979 when I sang the song Dark Ages. That was within my scope to do in the studio and do 2 or 3 takes of it, but I know I never found that one. I think we might have attempted to play it live on stage back then, but it was a real struggle. And probably in 1982 on the album Broadsword and the Beast, I was pushing myself there to unsafe levels. And by the time I got to 1984, when in the studio, perhaps I felt I was actually at my best and able to push my voice to its limits as a baritone, I was ill-advised, as it turned out, to do that, because I really struggled with that on stage. And in the attempt to do shows in 1984, I really damaged my vocal cords, and that was, required a best part of a year of rethinking my approach to get back to performing fitness again. But we all do what we can. At least I'm not a tennis player. If you're a tennis pro in the tournaments around the world, you're going to suffer from knee problems, elbow problems, hip problems, and sometimes great players come back from seemingly the end of their career. Rafael Nadal, Andy Murray's just managed to make a comeback. Roger Federer's had lots of injuries over the years. And, sometimes with great care and determination, these people get back to grab another few years, precious few years, at the top of their game. And I think that's kind of what happens to a lot of people in many walks of life. But you struggle. Actors have to memorize their lines. And that gets a lot harder as you get older. I mean, for some actors, they can't manage to do it at all without cue cards in front of them, even when they're young. But, guys who perhaps perform live on stage and do Shakespeare, you actually have a colossal amount of stuff to learn and to remember. And I think those things can get harder as you get older. But, the best preventative measure that you can take is, I think the worst thing is to take time off. It's much better to keep, every day to play your instrument for an hour or two and sing for an hour or two or whatever it is you're doing. It's much easier to keep up that standard. If you don't take extended breaks, then it's a struggle to get back. So, for that reason, I tend to try and work, if I can, every week, even if it's just playing 2 or 3 shows a week, which is, for me, far more enjoyable than doing long tours and getting burnt out along the way.
More from Ian Anderson coming up next week. Make sure you comment on our video, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. I'm John Beaudin from Rocky Street Music.